Paul Schaefer is my candidate for the worst person of all time. He was a Nazi medic during World War II, and after the war, he and a large group of immigrants moved to South America and settled south of Chile. These refugees, led by Paul, started a large ranch known as Colonia Dignidad. Paul was a Christian minister, and instead of being a beacon of hope for his followers, a lamppost to look to for light after the horrors of that war, Paul started a brutal cult with himself at the centre. Most infamously, Paul separated the kids from their parents, creating a large compound in the middle of the colony to hold them. The children were made to compete for his quote-unquote affection, and were punished severely for any hint of resistance. Torture and isolation were regular and constant. Colonia Dignidad is the name of a place seared into the collective consciousness of Chileans. After the brutal overthrowing of the socialist leader Salvador Allende by Augusto Pinochet, the compound was used to brutally torture suspected communists and political opponents. This was ultimately done at the height of the Cold War, and Western countries used this as an opportunity to establish neoliberal capitalism all across South America, impoverishing the country's people to make American bankers all the richer. If you want to learn more about the socio-political and economic factors behind this cult, please read Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine, and more specifically watch A Sinister Sect, Colonia Dignidad on Netflix. Both of these do a much better job at explaining the history than I ever could. People have a fascination with cults, the techniques of persuasion, the charisma of the leader, the violence that underlies the facade of serenity. And only in recent years has the world learned about the colony. Paul was arrested in the early 2000s, and he died in prison. He was active for 4 decades, and the damage he caused is unknowable.
En el sur de Chile, en medio de la naturaleza semisalvaje, con un marco de cerros de imponente belleza, vivimos, trabajamos, servimos a la comunidad del país y cantamos, un grupo de alemanes.
The Wolf House is an abstract art film. It is framed as a propaganda film produced by Colonia Dignidad, aimed towards the colony's children, trapped in the middle of a nightmare of which they had no control.
La leyenda oscura que se ha creado a nuestro alrededor se debe principalmente a la ignorancia. Son ignorantes quienes temen a una comunidad que permanece pura y aislada.
The film has a loose narrative. A girl named Maria escapes the colony and lives in the woods. She finds an abandoned house in which she raises 2 kids. Of course, the film is not a propaganda piece. It is instead an abstracted fairy tale which seeks to articulate something far scarier than a straightforward horror film could ever do. The Wolf House is a multimedia piece, shot on a camera frame by frame, using the house that was filmed in to convey its story, meaning they paint scenes onto the walls. I find claymation to be a really neat medium, because it's cute and childlike, but it can become intensely disturbing. It's the texture that gets to me. The violence feels weightier because actual material is being cut away. And the Wolf House, although it doesn't feature any blood, captures this quality. Maria and her children have a real sense of mass and volume in their scenes. There are segments where the characters are moving and they shift between mediums. One moment they're being painted on the walls of the house, and then they're paper mache, and then their silhouettes. Not only is this an awe-inspiring and fantastic use of the medium, circumventing the inherent limitations of the premise, but it makes their fall all the more tragic. Although they feel uncanny, they are real in your imagination. The art of the film is stunning, but it wouldn't mean very much if they didn't get the emotions of the story right. Having an inkling of context helps one to understand the film better. The first time I saw it, I knew nothing about the cult or Schaefer, and as a piece of art by itself, it is incredible. It's truly unique and deeply disturbing. I tend not to analyse films in this series because it's primarily a recommendation, but I feel as if I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't try to describe why this movie is so powerful. Animation is a really powerful way to explore abstract ideas, because you can express what cannot be done in reality. The narrative is purposefully in conflict with the intention of the film. The masculine narrator is a stand-in for Schaefer, and in the film's logic it aims to reinforce the cult's children's fears. If you leave, things will be bad, the outside world is scary, and it will kill you. As a savvy audience member though, we can read a subtext that the narrators did not intend. We view the film outside of the film, and painting on the walls represents this. The outside world is so scary that the very walls of Sanctuary will morph and try to eat you. Every house is a wolf house, so stay put, or else. Maria is not based on any one person, but she is an amalgamation of several children who escaped, were caught, and were severely punished for their daring. Reports are that several kids were starved, beaten, and put into solitary confinement for 100 days. These kids were often referred to as swine, so of course Maria runs away with 2 pigs and hides in the wolf house.
Yo no extraño a nadie. Aquí puedo jugar y cantar. Voy a transformar a mi cerdito en criatura hermosa que nunca me abandonará.
This goes well with how the film uses fairy tales. These stories are meant to convey a moral to children. Stay on the path. Don't trust strangers. Cautionary tales to keep them safe. And appropriating the structure of a fairy tale to instill fear is ruinously effective in the psyche, because we engage with them like children do. We remember what it was like being a kid, and so the horror comes from remembering our own uncertainty. That's why films like Coraline are so popular with kids and adults. We engage with the moral in the same way. The Wolf House perverts this, appropriating the verbs of Little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks to tell children to go against their better judgment, and to put all of their faith into a man who is only interested in satisfying his carnal lust. Much of the narration has an ASMR quality to it.
Y un poco de rabia. Por todo el trabajo. Me siento débil.
As if the film itself were a bedtime story. This intimate quality is juxtaposed against the unnerving papier-mâché animation. But as a savvy audience, we can recognize that there is a lot of manipulation taking place here. For example, Maria is never alone. The narrator whispers her name at random times. Letting you know that he is always watching. This is done so you can get a feeling of what it's like to survive a cult. The leader will always linger on in the survivor's life, because they were instrumental to their development for years. The whispers have a haunting quality that has never left me. The camera routinely invades the privacy of the characters. Often we see them on the toilet or getting dressed. This lack of privacy is meant to mimic how hyper-controlled people in cultic or totalitarian situations are. The film is trying to normalize this invasion of privacy. Child, you are never alone, the film says. And that is supposed to be okay. This conveys the message that self-definition and Colonia Dignidad are one and the same. There is no you, only all of us. The Wolf House is truly a triumph. The amount of time, planning, and effort put into this hour and 10 minutes is astonishing. It conveys what it must have felt like to be trapped in this cult, and although it is not explicitly a scary movie, it is frightening. Every frame is considered, and there are thousands of them. It's a labour of love that is unlike anything else I've ever seen. And you should watch The Wolf House, because it's about the horror of children realising they cannot trust adults. Thank you for watching.
Escuché la voz de Pedro.